Have you ever wondered why some people cannot rest until every conflict is discussed, every misunderstanding is cleared, and every feeling is acknowledged, while others simply go quiet and disappear into silence? To understand that, we need to return to the very beginning, to childhood, where our first lessons about love, conflict, and safety are silently written into us. Growing up in a family that avoids talking after arguments teaches a powerful but invisible rule. Peace comes from silence, not from understanding. When voices rise, and then suddenly everything goes quiet, a child learns that emotions are dangerous. They learn that disagreement means distance, that anger means rejection, and that the safest thing to do is to wait, to stay quiet until the air feels normal again. But that kind of peace is fragile. It isn't true calm. It's just fear wearing a mask of quiet. And the child who grows up inside that silence carries it into every part of their adult life. Inside the human brain, every emotional experience is recorded not only as a memory, but also as a pattern. When a child's nervous system learns that conflict brings danger and that talking about it brings even more tension, it rewires itself for survival. Their heart rate changes. Their breathing tightens. They learn to sense emotional shifts faster than words can describe. Over time, their nervous system becomes like a finely tuned alarm, always listening, always waiting for the next wave of tension. Psychologists call this hypervigilance. It is the reason why, as adults, these people often overthink simple things: a short text message, a sudden pause in conversation, a small change in someone's tone. Their brain has learned that silence might mean danger. Waiting feels unbearable. They crave resolution not because they love drama, but because they need reassurance that connection is still safe. In adulthood, this can look like overexplaining, like writing long messages trying to make everything clear, like replaying conversations in the mind over and over again. The person isn't being obsessive. They are trying to avoid the same emotional freeze they grew up with. The silence after conflict once felt endless. Now, they cannot bear to feel it again. Many people who grew up in emotionally quiet households describe feeling restless when something feels unresolved. They apologize even when it's not their fault. They try to fix things immediately, even when others aren't ready to talk. They analyze every small gesture because their nervous system refuses to relax until everything feels safe again. But what's interesting is that the opposite also happens. Some people who grow up in such families become the silent ones. They mimic what they saw. When conflict arises, they shut down, withdraw, or pretend everything is fine. For them, emotional closeness feels threatening because it always carried the risk of explosion or rejection. So they build walls made of calmness. They seem strong, collected, unbothered, but inside, they feel the same fear of disconnection, only buried deeper. Avoidance feels peaceful at first, but it comes with a cost. When we avoid the discomfort of honest communication, we also lose the chance to build trust. Children who never saw conflicts being resolved don't learn how to repair them. And so, as adults, they confuse emotional distance with safety. They stay quiet not because they don't care, but because they don't know another way. The irony is that silence, the thing they learn to protect themselves with, becomes the very thing that hurts them. It prevents understanding. It deepens loneliness. It leaves them longing for peace, but unable to create it. Neuroscience and attachment research both show that emotional repair, the act of openly resolving conflict, is essential for secure connection. It teaches the brain that relationships can survive tension. Without it, the nervous system stays trapped in survival mode, unable to fully relax even in love. So imagine a person who, as a child, watched their parents argue and then pretend nothing happened. That child becomes an adult who panics when someone says, "We need to talk." Their body remembers every time that phrase meant danger. Their mind races. Their hands shake. They want to fix it, to explain everything, to make sure love doesn't disappear. Not because they are dramatic, but because they are scared. Scared of silence, scared of distance, scared of being left alone in the quiet once again. And so they chase peace the only way they know, by trying to make everything right immediately. They talk, they write, they explain, they clarify, all in the hope that when it's done, when everything is said, they can finally breathe again. That is why some people cannot move on from an argument until they've talked it through. They are not being controlling. They are trying to feel safe. Because somewhere deep inside, their body remembers what it was like to be small and scared in a house full of unspoken tension. And this is where the healing journey begins, with the understanding that what feels like overthinking is not a flaw, but a wound left by silence, a pattern created by love that never learned how to speak. Healing from emotional silence is not about blaming the past. It's about understanding how deeply our early experiences shaped the way we love, communicate, and react today. What once protected us now holds us back. The same instincts that helped us survive childhood can quietly sabotage our adult relationships. The good news is that the brain and heart can learn again. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to form new pathways, to create new meanings, to experience safety in ways it never could before. Healing is not about erasing old memories. It's about teaching the body that the world has changed, that it is no longer dangerous to speak, to feel, to stay present. The first step is awareness. Before we can change anything, we must notice the pattern. When you catch yourself replaying a conversation over and over in your mind, pause. Ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I don't fix this right now? Often, the answer is not about the current situation. It's about that old fear, the fear that silence means abandonment, that being misunderstood means being unloved. Awareness turns unconscious reaction into conscious choice. It gives you the moment you need to breathe before explaining yourself for the 10th time. It gives you permission to say, I feel anxious right now, but I know this feeling comes from an older place. That one sentence can start to rewrite your nervous system. The second step is regulation. You cannot think your way out of emotional panic. The body has to feel safety before the mind can believe it. Simple grounding techniques. Feeling your feet on the floor, taking slow breaths, noticing the room around you. Signal to the brain that you are not in danger. You can talk about the problem or not talk, without the world falling apart. Over time, this begins to separate silence from fear. The third step is communication. For those who grew up in households where conflict was avoided, open communication feels unnatural, even threatening. But learning to speak from a calm, grounded place is one of the most powerful skills you can build. Instead of rushing to fix, try expressing feelings without demands. Instead of long explanations, try honesty in small doses. When things go quiet, I start to worry. Can you reassure me we're okay? This kind of vulnerability feels terrifying at first, but the more often you experience safety after expressing a fear, the stronger your new wiring becomes. The brain starts to associate connection with truth, not with silence. Many therapists describe this process as reparenting yourself. It means becoming the adult who can now give you what you didn't receive as a child: emotional validation, gentle honesty, and patience. You become the one who sits with your own discomfort, who doesn't run from tension, who says, it's okay to feel this way. That is how emotional maturity grows, not by avoiding pain, but by learning to stay present with it. Another powerful part of healing is practicing boundaries. For those raised to equate peace with pleasing others, saying no feels like betrayal. But boundaries are not rejection. They are the structure that makes connection safe. When you can hold your limits with kindness, you teach your nervous system that love can exist without self-abandonment. Then comes forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself. Many people blame themselves for being too emotional, too sensitive, or too intense. But those traits are often the scars of survival. You learn to read every tiny signal in others because you had to. You learn to keep peace because chaos was unbearable. That's not weakness. That's adaptation. And the moment you see it for what it is, an intelligent, protective strategy, is the moment you can let it rest. With time, something beautiful happens. The silence that once felt threatening begins to feel gentle. You realize you can sit in quiet without fear. You no longer need every message answered, every conflict resolved instantly. You trust that connection can survive the space between words. That trust, slow, quiet, steady, is the real definition of peace. When that shift happens, relationships transform. You stop chasing reassurance and start creating understanding. You stop over-explaining and start listening. You start to believe that love can stay, even when things are imperfect. The child you once were finally feels safe enough to breathe. And this, truly, is what healing looks like. It's not about becoming unbothered or detached. It's about becoming free. Free from the old reflexes that controlled you. Free from the fear that silence means loss. Healing is when you can look at a moment of misunderstanding and say, "We'll work through this," instead of, "They're going to leave." Healing is when your nervous system finally learns that peace doesn't depend on control and love doesn't depend on perfection. So if you find yourself writing long messages, overthinking every tone, or feeling uneasy when things go quiet, remember, you are not broken. You are simply learning a new language of safety, one word at a time. That is the power of awareness, patience, and compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. Because in the end, the greatest conversation you will ever have is the one you finally hold with your own heart. Healing doesn't happen in a single moment of realization. It unfolds quietly, day after day, in the way you respond to small things, a disagreement with a friend, a pause in a text conversation, a moment of silence with someone you love. These moments used to trigger anxiety, the old instinct to fix, to explain, to fill the space. But now, little by little, you begin to notice that you can stay calm. You can breathe. You can let the silence exist without fearing what it means. That is how change really looks. It's not loud or dramatic. It's subtle. You start to notice that your body doesn't tense up the way it used to. Your chest feels lighter. You stop reading every pause as rejection. You stop mistaking stillness for danger. You begin to realize that peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of safety, even when conflict happens. And when that safety grows inside you, something else happens too. Your relationships change. You attract people who value honesty over avoidance, who can stay in discomfort without running away. You stop needing people to read your mind, because now you can say what you feel. You stop chasing constant reassurance, because now you trust your own worth even in uncertainty. That's the hidden gift of healing from emotional silence. It gives you back your voice. The voice that was once too scared to speak, too worried to be misunderstood, too careful to upset anyone. That voice becomes clear again. It learns to speak calmly, truthfully, kindly. It learns to say, "This hurt me," and also, "I still care." It learns that love and honesty can coexist. But healing isn't perfect. There will still be moments when the old fear returns. Maybe someone goes quiet, and your heart starts to race. Maybe you feel the urge to explain everything again. When that happens, remember, growth isn't about never falling back. It's about noticing sooner and choosing differently. Instead of spiraling, you pause. Instead of begging for reassurance, you give yourself compassion. You remind yourself, "I've been here before, and I know how to soothe myself." With every repetition, that new pathway grows stronger. The brain learns safety not from theories, but from experiences. Each time you remain calm in the presence of uncertainty, each time you allow silence without panic, you're teaching your body that the danger has passed. You're creating a new emotional truth. Silence can be peaceful, not painful. And as this truth settles in, your entire view of connection transforms. You begin to see that real intimacy isn't built on constant harmony. It's built on repair. It's built on the courage to say, "I was hurt," and to hear, "I'm sorry." It's built on the faith that two people can face discomfort and come out closer, not colder. You also learn to recognize others who carry the same quiet wounds. The friend who apologizes too often. The partner who can't rest after an argument. The coworker who overexplains every small thing. You begin to see them not as difficult, but as familiar, reflections of who you once were. And suddenly, you find yourself offering what you once needed most: patience, gentleness, understanding. That's what it means to break the cycle. Healing yourself doesn't just free you, it softens the world around you. In time, you will realize that the silence you once feared has changed its meaning. It's no longer the heavy silence of avoidance or suppression. It becomes the quiet of peace, of presence, of two people sitting together, not needing words to prove connection. It becomes the calm after honesty, not the calm after fear. That's what healing sounds like. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of peace. If you could speak to your younger self, that child who sat in the quiet after every argument, waiting for love to return, what would you tell them? Maybe you'd say, "It wasn't your fault." Maybe you'd say, "You didn't have to be the one to keep the peace." Maybe you'd simply say, "You're safe now." Those words, spoken in your heart, begin to heal what silence once left unfinished. And as you move forward, you'll find that you no longer crave perfect communication. You'll crave connection that feels safe, even in imperfection. You'll crave people who can listen, pause, reflect, and return, not disappear. You'll crave a love that can hold both tension and tenderness at once. This is the gift of learning to speak again, to trust again, to stay, even when things feel uncomfortable. Because the real peace we've been searching for was never found in silence. It was found in the courage to speak and the grace to listen. So if today you are learning to speak after years of silence, be proud of yourself. If you are learning to sit in quiet without fear, honor that progress. If you are learning to express your needs, even shakily, that is bravery. The truth is simple. We heal not by avoiding pain, but by transforming it into understanding. We heal when we can hold space for the silence that once hurt us and finally feel calm inside it. And in that calm, something incredible happens. The child within you finally exhales. The silence that once meant distance now feels like home. That's where peace truly begins.